So hey, what's up guys, today we are gonna see what if Naruto awakens spiritual intelligence. This is episode 1, this story will contain 6 episodes. It'll complete this series, so make sure to like and subscribe. So let's dive into episode 1. The chasm floor below was rapidly approaching. A young boy's small body hurtled toward that destination, an unstoppable projectile on a highway to imminent death. Oh, and he had tried to stop it. His 2 broken fingers, snapped just moments earlier trying to arrest his fall on the muddy chasm walls, spoke more than enough of his most recent failure. You need to learn to harness the Kyuubi's chakra. The pervy sage's words barged to the front of his mind for just a moment before he tossed them out with the same tact they'd arrived with. What did that jerk know anyways? It was his fault that Naruto was about to be turned into paste on the ground anyways. Plus, the Kyuubi had seemingly ignored his first call, back when he had first started falling. There was no time to try again, so Naruto stuck with what he knew, and started to improvise. His 2 broken fingers crossed messily with those of his other hand, forming a sloppy cross formation. Shadow Clone Jutsu. At once, well over a dozen puffs of smoke erupted from around the boy, dispersing just a moment after to reveal that many identical clones of himself. There was no time to discuss strategy, so they didn't bother. Instead, they latched onto one another, as if knowing exactly what their fellows were thinking, and made one more token effort to stall their fall by digging into the chasm wall. Still, even with their collective efforts, Naruto's fall barely slowed, if at all. The ground was mere feet away, and it felt like time had just about slowed to a crawl. Naruto knew deep in his gut that if he didn't do anything decisive right at this moment, he wouldn't get another chance. Just at that moment, a single idea popped into his head, so stupid it might actually work. Transform. He yelled to his team. Into what? The desperation in his clone's voice matched his own, perfectly. The ball of sorts crossed his mind. Something springy. At once, his clones began to weave hand seals, intending to cast an ninjutsu. The Ogboram. Collectively, they shouted transformation jutsu, amassing themselves into a singular sphere of rubber-like material and surrounding the original. In their haste, the integrity of the transformation had been compromised, and the results spoke for themselves when the ball burst on impact. His fall softened a touch, barely at all. Still, a difference might very well have been made. It would seemingly be the difference between instant death and slow, painful one. As his body was mercilessly smashed into the ground, courtesy of gravity, Naruto felt the exact moment that his bones shattered on impact. All of them, or at least most of them, were rendered to a fragmented mess, as heaps of dust lifted around his broken mass. Pain was no new sensation for the boy. When you were a ninja, you got used to injuries of all kinds. Scrapes, bruises, and broken bones were simply the norm in a field of work such as his. Even still, there was a world of difference between the occasional ouchies in the line of duty, and whatever hell this was. Calling it pain would have been too big of an understatement. It was excruciating, agonizing, and some other third adjective that Naruto was too blinded by his own suffering to fish out from his pitiful conquest head. Choking back a sob, Naruto tried to flex his arms, then his legs. Both efforts were simply met with more pain and little else. He couldn't move them, no matter how hard he tried. Certainly not conducive to finding help. What difference would it make? Even if he managed to drag his near-lifeless corpse in search of aid, who would even help him? The thought came suddenly, and a sense of coldness chased its heels. It was no secret that the people of Konoha hated Naruto. For the longest time he'd wondered why, had desperately begged for someone, anyone, to tell him what he had done to deserve their resentment. Now, he knew that it all came back to the titanic, hateful mass of chakra that resided in his gut. The Kyuubi no Kitsune, which had devastated the village 13 years prior. Somehow, knowing hadn't helped him at all. If anything, it had just hurt him more. Perhaps if it had been his own fault, he could have convinced himself that he could atone for his mistakes. If anything, Naruto could have at least seen a path toward making peace with the people of Konoha. However, knowing that the source of their disdain was completely out of his control sparked a different sort of pain. Not quite like a myriad of broken bones, but pretty damn close. Was that why Jiraiya had pushed him off the cliffside? Was his training little more than a facade, an excuse to kill the boy and call it an accident? The man's cold stare flashed before Naruto's eyes for a moment, and all he could feel was resentment. The coldness in his chest had begun to spread, slowly overtaking the rest of his body. Naruto wondered what his old sensei Kakashi would do in his situation. The man was renowned for being proficient with over 1,000 different techniques. No doubt he could whip out some kind of wacky healing jutsu to set himself straight. Hell, Naruto doubted the man would have ever found himself in this situation in the first place. He was so resourceful. As his mind settled on the silver-haired man, Naruto once more felt that same ugly feeling rear up within him again. Kakashi had abandoned him. There really was no other way to go about it. The man had pawned him off to Abisu, a third-rate ninja and grade 1 asshole. Also, he could spend the month teaching Sasuke instead. Perhaps Naruto's resentment over that particular detail would have been less prominent, were Abisu not such a dick. Or perhaps Naruto would be less judgmental overall of Kakashi, were he able to think of a single thing that the man had ever taught him, personally. Though, there were some lessons that he had imparted onto their team, the man wasn't incompetent. Tree climbing back in waves stood out as a core memory for the boy. But that had been a special case, and as dozens of moments flitted through Naruto's memory, each of him asking the man for guidance in one way or another, Naruto found a common thread in them all. Each request for training, wisdom, or any other such help had all been cheerfully rejected or ignored by a man who should have had his best interests at heart. Did Kakashi even consider that his student was currently dying on a chasm floor, while he showered Sasuke with all of his teachings? Would he even care, if he did? The coldness had spread to his limbs, now. It was getting harder to think, and he still hadn't figured a way out of this, yet. There were no ninjutsu that he could cast, broken as he was, and his lungs couldn't take in enough air to even breathe, let alone cry for help. I am going to die here, aren't I? It was the first fully coherent thought about himself that he'd been able to scrounge together, and how depressing was that? I'm not going to be Hokage. I'm never going to be respected by the village. I'll never get to prove Niji wrong and keep the promise I made for Hinata. His bloodied eye sockets began to sting as tears welled up within them. I'm going to die here, an unremarkable death for an unremarkable talentless loser, just like everyone always said. A moment passed, and something sparked within his soul. A rage, unlike anything he had ever felt before, swelled within his body. It was so intense it hurt, worse even than the pain of his broken bones. Why was it that nothing could ever go right for him? Why was it always him who was made to eat the largest share of life's shit cake? Why was he bleeding out in a hole somewhere while Sasuke got special treatment? Why had Kakashi saddled him with a bitter asshole like Abisu, instead of someone who could help him grow into a splendid ninja? Why had Jiraiya tried to kill him, instead of helping him flourish like the man had promised? His old teacher Mizuki's words flashed in his head. You're just a vessel for a monster. No, you're as bad as the monster itself. No one, not even Iruka, is stupid enough to let you fool them into thinking anything less. He could see it all in his mind's eye, he could almost hear it, even. The Kyuubi. Mizuki. Kakashi. Abisu. Jiraiya. The whole damn village, they were all laughing at him, they were all mocking his suffering while he died a pathetic fucking death in a muddy ditch, instead of living his life with even the most basic amount of decency. He couldn't die. He wouldn't. Naruto didn't care anymore. He didn't care what he had to do, or what he had to give to make it happen, but he would be damned to hell and back before he ever quit. The coldness had nearly reached the tips of his fingers when it abruptly stopped. Naruto gathered every ounce of fury in his heart and channeled it, letting its heat fight the ice in his chest. Fire bloomed in every cell of his body as Naruto fought, choking out a cry of determination as he searched once more for the Kyuubi's chakra. He survived this even if he had to rip the chakra out of the beast, himself. As if triggered by his rageful thoughts, Naruto suddenly found himself elsewhere. He was upright, and his limbs worked. For a moment, he wondered if his fall had even happened, or if it had simply been a dream. The scene before him was surreal, however, and the deep rumbling that echoed from all around him suggested otherwise. He was in the sewer, dark and dank, and massive unlike any sewer he had ever seen before. Titanic, red-tinted pipes stretched boundlessly across the walls, past the point of what he could even see with his limited vision. All of them seemingly led to one central point, right ahead of him. Naruto had often been called dense by his peers, but even he was smart enough to know where they lead. His earlier bravado was shaken all at once at the thought of approaching the Kyuubi. He felt its sickening presence, and knew the pressure before him would only increase, the closer he got. Nonetheless, the boy pushed forward after just a moment of pause. He refused to back down, certainly not when his very life depended on this meeting. Trudging through the knee-deep sewer water, Naruto tried to distract himself from the apprehension building in his chest. He'd heard enough about the Kyuubi to know it was not to be played around with. His experiences with its chakra, both against Haku and Orochimaru, had taught him to be cautious of its power. Now, he would be trying to take it for himself, potentially even against the beast's will, and the thought scared him almost senseless. Once more, Naruto played in his head the faces of those who had wronged him. He felt that same rage bubbling up within him, and knew he would need it for this encounter. He let it bloom, overtaking his own nervousness and steadying his steps. Unbeknownst to him, the vermilion chakra within the pipes had begun to seep from tiny, slowly widening cracks in the structures, steadily encroaching upon his body. Fingernails lengthened into cruel-looking claws, thick whiskers sprouted across his face, near completely covering his cheeks. Naruto's once cerulean eyes bled into a deep crimson, his pupils fully morphing into slits. Not even noticing his changes, the boy continued forward, swathing himself in his shield to meet the creature who had ruined his life. The Kyuubi's rolling chakra suffused itself throughout his body, peeling away at his flesh with insidious intent. By the time he had cleared the hallway and found himself standing before the massive gate which presumably held the Kyuubi, much of his flesh had peeled fully from his body, giving way to a burgundy hide of vile chakra. From behind the gate, a massive set of eyes watched the boy with growing amusement. Black muzzled lips stretched fully into a devious grin, as the Kyuubi regarded the foolish boy currently transforming before it. It had not even needed to say a single word, had not even needed to meet the boy to get him to fall victim to its influence. What hell had the child endured to become so susceptible to the Kyuubi's influence? That gave the creature pause as the tiniest slivers of guilt stabbed away at it. Its host was little more than a child. By now, he had grown so overwhelmed by even the tiny portion of chakra that it had given him, that he had gone nearly blind and limp under the weight of the Kyuubi's influence. Did a child truly deserve to be treated so callously? The faces of its previous hosts crossed its mind, as did the face of its jailer. Kushina Uzumaki and Minato Namikaze, respectively, both of them had been formidable ninja in their own right. They had certainly earned the Kyuubi's respect. They had also earned its undying hatred. The images of its two most hated adversaries overlaid almost perfectly with the twisted visage of its current host, and all of its empathy for the boy shriveled up and died. "Be honored, boy," the Kyuubi finally spoke, knowing the child could not even hear him as he was. "Be honored that your sacrifice will see me free, once and for all. It is not often that immortal such as yourself earns the thanks of a tailed beast. If you have anyone to blame for your current predicament, blame your idiot parents for allowing this to happen to you." It would only be seconds now, before the boy's body reached its breaking point and the seal collapsed. Oh, how the Kyuubi could feel its freedom rapidly approaching. Then, all at once, things went wrong as dozens of purple glowing chains burst from the ground's surface, ensnaring the boy in full. The Kyuubi cursed, attempting to match the chains with its own output of power. It knew, however, that its efforts were in vain, as the chains simply sucked away its chakra with a greedy pull. Really, it should have been expected that the boy's parents would leave behind a failsafe or two to meddle with its plans. With an irritated hiss, the Kyuubi watched helplessly as its host was dragged beneath the surface below, leaving it all alone to its fury. All at once, the haze over his mind had left. Naruto blinked once, then twice, in confusion. Then there was pain, a horrible, ungodly source of suffering that was everywhere at once. It was like every nerve, no, every cell in his body had been submerged in boiling hot water. It was like a brick of molten slag had lodged itself in his throat, rendering him unable to even scream properly. Then as quickly as it had come, the pain began to ebb as a warm palm pressed against his skinless forehead. Naruto could feel the ruined flesh mending itself from underneath the gentle palm of his company, stretching beneath his clothing to restore the rest of his abused flesh. A sense of peace had made itself known, completely overtaking everything else. It was pleasant. So pleasant that Naruto had nearly forgotten that another person was touching him. However, that particular detail made itself known again in the form of a curtain of thick crimson hair. Breath-hitching, Naruto's eyes trailed up to the source, coming face to stunning face of a woman who Naruto was half sure he'd never met before. Even still, the warmth of her smile lit up his heart with a joy that he had never even known he could feel. Her knuckles brushed his cheek with a caress that spread warmth in his cheeks. Naruto could feel, belatedly, that he had started to smile back. He'd never been the sort to let others touch him so casually. Absently, Naruto acknowledged that no one had ever tried, certainly not with such honesty, as he was currently feeling from this stranger, before him. The thought brought a dull ache to his chest. This one, Naruto knew, had nothing to do with any prior injuries. The woman's fingers gently cupped his chin, imploring him to meet her eyes. Blue met violet, and Naruto revised an earlier thought. He was sure that he knew her, somehow. Does it hurt? Her voice was equal parts music and serenity, like the chime of bells to his ears. He almost missed her question entirely. Naruto blinked slowly, confused. Then he let out a nervous chuckle, reaching up to scratch his newly mended scalp. "Actually, I'm feeling a whole lot better, believe it." At her amused expression, he hastily pushed forward. Actually, I have a question. Do you remember where you found me?" "See, I was on my way to do something really important," and he froze, slamming his jaw shut to avoid saying something he shouldn't. The lady sighed, sadly. "You were going to see the fox, right?" She smiled in response to his bug-eyed expression. "It's okay, Zame, I know." Once again, Naruto was sent reeling by the warmth in her expression. Doubly so, knowing now that she knew of the Kyuubi. Really, those two ideas tended to conflict with one another. Thus, it took him a moment to fully register what she had said. "Wait, Choma." "Zame," she sang back. "My heart." Patiently, the woman bore his staggered expression, loosing only a short chuckle as the boy lit into a furious blush. Finally taking pity on him, she cupped the boy's cheeks with both hands. "It seems introductions are in order for us. My name is Kushina." A pause, then, Uzumaki. Once more, Naruto's eyes widened, nearly bugging out of his head in shock. Kushina added, "And you are Naruto Uzumaki, my son." There was a long pause, then all at once Naruto began to choke, seemingly on his own saliva, as the weight of her words finally settled firmly on his throat. He felt like he had been sucker-punched twice, within a matter of seconds. His brain whirled like the cogs of a machine, trying to make sense of everything he had been told within the last few moments. Uzumaki. His mother. Naruto was half tempted to call her a liar. He nearly shouted in her face for playing such a cruel prank on him. Yet, a single look in her glistening eyes told him all that he needed to know, and Naruto found himself believing Kushina on the spot. Once again, he felt the telltale stinging of tears, shoring up around his eyes as Kushina's declaration became truth in his mind. Once more he feels like choking, a shallow sob rumbled at the back of his throat, so intense that it ached as he fully took in her appearance, really seeing her for the first time. He drank in her appearance like a man dying of thirst, trying to sear his mother's features into his mind, so that he never again wonder what his parents might have looked like. 1,000,001 questions blitzed through his mind, all far too quick for any hope of singling even one of them out. To her credit, his mother simply waited patiently, staring at him with the same kind of intensity, as if reciprocating his thoughts. Her eyes were wet, and Naruto realized after a moment that she was just as emotional as he was. Naruto felt a touch of embarrassment as he tried to put a lid on his emotions. With a real Herculean effort, he sucked down his sobs to ask her the one question, among them all, that he needs answered. Where the hell have you been? Her sad expression only served to piss him off, his own outrage far outweighing his sense, in that moment. Do you have any idea how fucking god-awful my life has been? Do you know how many nights I spent alone without food, sometimes shivering in an alley gutter, wondering why my mom and dad left me to be the village's punching bag? Naruto sobbed, his voice cracking. The old man Hokage couldn't always be on top of things. He was racked with memories of being kicked out, often juggled from orphanage to orphanage, with long periods of homelessness in between back, before the Hokage had decided he was fit to have his own place. A new wave of emotion hit him all at once. All alone. I was alone, and you weren't there. Where were you? Naruto raged, flailing his limbs with reckless abandon, begging her to see, to understand just what her absence meant to him. Dead. Her one-word response knocked all of the wind out of his sails. In an instant, his rage melted, this time giving way to horror. I'm dead, my love. Well, but you're right here. I don't understand. He was lying, and they both knew it. He understood perfectly what this was, now. He just needed to hear her say it, herself. What I am is little more than an echo of the original, left behind to be there for you when you needed her most. With a frustrated sigh, Kushina added, I know this isn't going to be what you want to hear, Naruto, but your parents are very dead. If the last reveals were sucker punches, this final revelation struck Naruto with a sledgehammer to the lungs. Dizziness cast its noose around his neck, leaving the boy to tumble to the floor like a marionette with its strings severed. He couldn't take it anymore, and a gut-wrenching wail poured from his lips, before he could think to repress it. Unable to think of anything else, Naruto curled himself tight, hoping to God that it'd ward off the brunt of what he was feeling. I need you guys so bad, it's been so hard, Mom. It's too hard. Steady fingers combed through his damp locks, comforting him in a way that he'd missed his entire life. It was the final straw, and Naruto scrambled to his knees and threw himself into his mother's arms, staining her blouse with snot and tears in equal parts. I'm sorry, I can't. I'm sorry. Naruto wailed, wishing that she would understand everything he needed to say, but couldn't find the words for. I'm so sorry. Patiently, Kushina tucked her son underneath her chin, lovingly nuzzling his scalp and whispering words of comfort. It's okay, Zama. Sailot Sasaki made peace, she hushed him. It's going to be okay. The flow of blood had stopped by now. Naruto's broken body looked little better than it had when he'd crashed into the ground. Even still, he continued breathing shallow breaths. Each inhale was a battle, hard won, but the threat of death had seemingly passed. His fingers twitched as Jiraiya finally slid down the mouth of the chasm to find his corpse. Oh dear God, the Toad Sage gasped. Good God, kid. This wasn't supposed to happen. Jiraiya slammed his fist into the wall. Stupid. Why did I push him? He could barely even pull a tadpole, let alone Gamma fucking Bunta. What is wrong with me? He knew what, though. He'd been too quick to make assumptions with the boy. He looked so much like Minato too much, even, it was easy to forget he was only a child. Minato himself hadn't managed to summon the Toad Boss until he was nearly 16 years old. What was he thinking, expecting a 13-year-old to pull it off? The kid had never even managed to willingly summon forth the Kyuubi's chakra. So many assumptions, so many mistakes, all conglomerating into one massive corpse-shaped fuck-up. Jiraiya sucked down another mouthful of curses. He could roast himself to hell and back after he had gotten the boy medical attention. He'd let the kid beat the dog shit out of him if it meant it'd make up for this, teach him any and every jutsu he knew, if it meant that Naruto would bounce back. Kneeling down, he made to lift the broken boy into his arms, only to be startled backward as the kid's body shuddered. Then, without warning, a swarm of purple, ethereal chains burst from Naruto's body. They whirled around with blinding speed, catching a few white locks from Jiraiya's head, and carving deep, scorching gouges into the wall and ground around them. Jiraiya skipped back, letting the chains ward him off. The wheeze trickled out from Naruto's mouth as his sightless eyes cracked open, just a touch. From his position, Jiraiya could see what a mess had been made of the boy's eyes. They were red and swollen, at least one of them had seemingly burst. Once more, Jiraiya tossed back a mixed drink of shame and horror at what the boy had endured on his watch. The chains began to slowly encircle the kid's body, wrapping tightly around him like a makeshift coffin. The elder could only watch in awe at the sight, momentarily forgetting the situation. He had only ever seen Kushina's own chains a handful of times. The two hadn't been particularly close, other than being mutuals through his late student. Still, he recognized the Uzumaki's adamantine chains, anywhere. They were unlike anything else in the world, and Jiraiya knew to move carefully around them if he wished to keep his head on his shoulders. With his mind made up, the toad sage formed a cross with his fingers, creating a single shadow clone. Wordlessly, it approached the pile of chains, cautiously moving to lift him. The chains rattled threateningly, but made no further move against him. "It's gonna be okay, kiddo. I'll get you help. Then you can shout at me all you want once you've recovered." Sharing a nod with his clone, the pair took off at top speed, taking care not to jostle his student and further aggravate his wounds. Their tears had dried hours ago, leaving the pair to silently hold one another. Naruto sighed. So his mother and father were well and truly gone, no Takashi's backsies. That hurt still. A part of him was glad, in a weird twisted sort of way. It was an ugly, selfishly creeping thought in the back of his mind that felt joy that they had died, for it meant that he had not simply been abandoned. If his parents had left him for good, Naruto was at least glad that it had not been by their own volition. Shyly, he voiced this thought to his mother. "Does that make me a shitty person, Mom?" Kushina chuckled, brushing her son's cheek with her knuckles. "No, Zomit, though I'd ask that you mind your language." Swiftly, she drowned out his hasty apology with a wet kiss on his forehead. "Only death could have kept us away from you, my love. Both of us. We love you so much that we died for you." After a moment, she added, "And I would do it again and again, if I could. But not enough to live for me, huh?" There it was again, that bitter ugliness in him. He was ashamed of it. Naruto quickly forced out an apology, knowing that wasn't a fair criticism. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean it's just that I keep thinking of my classmates, and how they get to go home to a loving family. I think of all of the things that I miss that I'm going to continue to miss, because you and Dad are gone." Naruto cast his eyes downward, not wanting to see the judgment in her expression. "I'll never get to learn ninjutsu from you, or how to cook a good meal, or anything else that just sucks, that's all. Don't feel ashamed for how you feel, Naruto. I don't blame you for feeling upset, or for feeling bitter. I can't imagine the suffering you've been through, up until now. I can't fathom the pain you're going to have to endure because your father and I weren't strong enough to be there for you. Growing up, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Naruto." She paused for the moment, planting a kiss on the crown of his head. Then, murmuring into his hair, she added, "But don't think for a second that we haven't left you any help. Your father and I both took precautionary measures to make sure that you'll have everything you need to grow into your own." At his questioning glance, Kushina smiled. "Your father left an echo for you, much like myself." "Then where is he?" Naruto craned his neck to look around, hoping to catch a glimpse of the man. A moment later, he felt foolish for doing so. "Only one of us can be present at any given time. We designed the seal like that, so that we have as many opportunities to help you as we could manage." Kushina sighed. "These echoes of ours cannot last forever. The only reason I have persisted for as long as I have, is because the Kyuubi screwed up." She bore her son's questioning glare with patience, trying to find the words to sate his curiosity. "The fox tried to take over your body. It tried to take advantage of your lowest point to slip through the seal and dominate your will with its own." There was a disgust in her tone that told him exactly what she thought of the Kyuubi and its actions. "But Minato and I predicted that it might, someday." Smirking, Kushina added that that's where I came in. "I lulled the fox into a sense of security, letting it think it had won. It flooded your body with its chakra, trying to completely overtake you. Then I used my chains to suppress the power it had dumped into you, and steal it for myself." Naruto shared a grin. "So you pranked it, essentially." "Something like that." The pair laughed over her admission, then Kushina firmly gripped his face, plastering her seriousness over her own. "Without his chakra, I likely could not have lasted nearly as long as I have. Heck, I should have faded to nothingness like hours ago. As I am now though, I still have plenty more in the tank. I could last for days, weeks, even, so long as I'm conservative with my usage." Something akin to hope flitted across Naruto's face. It was a shy thing, terribly flimsy after all of the other times he'd been disappointed in his life. "So you can stay." "Not forever, my love. But for now, yes. I can stay, and I have every intention of making the most of this opportunity we've been given." There was a hidden meaning to her words, Naruto knew. "What are you trying to say?" "You said you were sad that you'll never get to know us. You'll never get to learn ninjutsu from the two of us because we're dead. That's what you said, right?" At his forlorn nod, Kushina let a toothy grin melt across her features. "Then we'd better get started, teaching you as much as we can while we have this chance." She could see it now, the realization in his eyes of just what the soul meant. Wait, but how? Even if we had weeks, there's no way we could get through it all. Where would we even start? At the root of it all, Zama. We start with the history of our clan and what that means for you. It all starts with a technique of ours. It's a sealing jutsu unlike any other, which our people use to pass down a gift to our next generation. Naruto's eyes narrowed, confused at her words. A gift? What gift? Kushina let out a bark of laughter. Everything. Naruto's chain cocoon body had been deposited onto a hospital bed, where it had seemingly taken root, seeming plant and metal in equal parts. More of the ghostly material had sprouted from the mass, wrapping around the bed and digging into the walls, ceiling, and floor for support. From there, it began hissing, yes, hissing at anyone who got too close. Anyone foolish enough to try touching it had been warded off rather aggressively. The one attempt to cut any of the support lines currently ingrained into every surface had, well, it had not ended well for the poor nurse who had tried. Needless to say that the situation had evolved into quite the mess. That mess was the scene that the third Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi, walked into, accompanied by a nail-biting Jiraiya. The Hokage's piercing brown eyes swiveled to each chain as if calculating something, then ultimately settled on the now beating mass of chains in the center. They remained affixed to it for a moment before shifting to meet the anxious stare of his pupil, Jiraiya. Explain yourself, was all the man said. His cold glare left no room for disobedience. Jiraiya knew to tread lightly with the man. The Hokage's patience was typically great, near infallible, even. However, Jiraiya raised a finger, mouth slightly ajar as if to begin this story. Then he dropped it, his shoulders following through as he sighed. I have no excuses. I fucked up, plain and simple. The Hokage said nothing, and his student took the silence as a sign to continue. I was trying to teach him the summoning jutsu. I thought it'd be a perfect moment to get him familiar with harnessing the Kyuubi's chakra. He knew he'd find judgment in the stare of his mentor. Thus, he didn't even bother looking up at the man, instead pushing forward. He told me that all of his experiences with its chakra had been in life or death situations, so I thought a repeat of that would help him reach the beast. And he failed. No, Jiraiya cut in. No, I failed him. Jiraiya beat back the urge to shout. I didn't take the precautions I should have to make sure he'd be safe. Frustrated, his fingers curled through his long mane of white hair, pulling at it painfully. Old man, I swear to God that it was an accident. I was so sure he'd succeed that Jiraiya's words failed him then and there. Really, there was nothing else to say. He had failed the kid in every way imaginable. Now his student's son lay broken before them, a pulsating, hissing metal mummy. Hiruzen's eyes softened a touch at his student's guilt-ridden expression. There was no need to dig any deeper to see the regret in the man. Be grateful then, Jiraiya, that you will have a chance to offer your apologies. He will survive, he simply added, instead. You're certain? The hope in Jiraiya's tone was palpable, and Hiruzen nodded, affirming for them both. I've had him looked at by my Hyugamedics. From the sleeve of his robe, the Hokage procured a rather chunky scroll, and placed it into Jiraiya's hastily raised palm. His wounds are quite terrible. 143 broken bones, his left eye ruptured to a bloody pulp, and both orbital bones crushed, his diaphragm has collapsed. Hiruzen sighed. His left arm, his ulna, was shattered, the fragments scattered from the impact. It may need to be amputated. We're not sure yet. Oh my god. Jiraiya pressed his temples, forcing back a sob. Oh my god, Minato. You baby boy, He'll survive, Hiruzen firmly repeated for his student. But whether he'll be able to remain a ninja is an entirely different story. That was an understatement. Ninja endured injuries all the time, but it was rare that one was able to bounce back from wounds of this depth. Still, there was a certain factor that most ninja did not possess. Most ninja, young and old, were not the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi. Everything. Naruto blanched. What does it even mean? It means exactly what I said, Zama. Kushina chuckled. Everything. Our lives, our legacy, even our bodies and chakra, well, sort of. That last part, Kushina tacked on with a shrug. Everything we have, everything we are, all of it is yours. Such is the nature of the legacy seal. Still sensing his confusion, Kushina ran her hands through her hair, searching through her mind for the best place to start her explanation. Okay, bear with me for a moment while I try to explain this stink of a bee. You've already lost me, Naruto deadpanned. But dear bees pass down their genetic memory to their next generation, you understand that much, yes? Now I do. Certain animals, like bees, pass down important information with each generation. Evolution demands that most living things pass down their genetics to our young. Over time, flaws in our programming are filtered out, leaving only the best qualities to survive the test of time. Bees are a bit different in that the things they pass down are not simply limited to their basic biology. They pass down memories, knowledge, Naruto. This helps them to process left-behind tasks and continue their work as their lifespans reach their natural end. So we're bees. Yes. Well, no, but yes. For the sake of this lesson, you can think of us like bees. With a huff, Naruto's mother continued her explanation. Okay, many generations ago, our clan discovered a means by which to essentially upload information for the future. Through the legacy seal, we created a network of feelings, knowledge, and experiences for our people to use. But this, every generation should have all of the tools necessary to guaranteedly be greater than the last, was the expectation. Does that make sense? Naruto frowned. I think so. So it's like leaving behind a notebook with all of your life's work for your kids to pick up. His mother praised his analogy. Yes, that's exactly right. Every generation of Uzumaki leaves behind their own notebook, which the next generation takes and adds to before passing on to the next. This notebook is a nexus of everything that we are, so that our children have it easier and can go farther in life than we did. That doesn't make any sense though. Naruto interjected, confused. I don't know much about seals, but even I know that seals can do stuff like that. You use seals to seal objects, sealing is literally in the name. How do you take that and turn it into freaking genetic reprogramming? Kushina raised an eyebrow. It sounds to me like your education was steaming hot garbage. What has the third been teaching you, if that's all you understand about seals? Naruto floundered for a moment. He didn't really teach me anything. There was something dark that passed over Kushina's face. It barely lasted a second, but Naruto meekly squeaked out an apology, all the same. I'm not mad at you, my love. I'm just understanding more and more that my trust in that man was misplaced. Kushina plopped down onto the ground, patting her lap in a clear invitation. As her son anxiously joined her, resting his head, the Redeed began to idly braid a few stray blonde locks. Taking a moment, Kushina decided to switch gears. I'll continue my explanation of the legacy seal in just a moment. Bear with me as we take a quick crash course in sealing. Her son nodded, and so Kushina continued. You'll learn the nuances as you go, so I'll keep it brief. Sealing is less of a ninja technique and more of an esoteric language. Even among those who practice it, only a few really understand the true potential of sealing, even less actually understand how it truly works. A pause occurred as Kushina gathered another few locks of hair. You compared sealing to programming earlier. Unintentionally or not, you're actually right on the money. Sealing, or fuinjutsu, is simply the art of programming by sealing or unsealing elements to produce desired effects. That's where it gets its name, by the way. I don't get it, Naruto whined. So you're basically shaping reality by locking away things you don't want to happen, and keeping the stuff that you do. PFFFT Kushina began to lightly chuckle. It sounds to me like you understand, perfectly. Picking another few strays, she added, you're already beginning to understand how this all works. You just need a few more clues, is all. Tell me, how would you go about making an explosive tag? Well I guess you could mix some volatile chemicals and seal them all away. How would you get those volatile chemicals to ignite? Seal a spark. Naruto sensed Kushina's gaze urging him to continue, so after a moment he added, I guess you could seal a spark and overlay it with the first seal that you made to hold the chemicals. If you activate them at once, you suddenly have a bunch of volatile chemicals in the spark. He was startled when his mom began to suddenly clap. Very good, son. That's a perfectly valid way to make an explosive. She laid a kiss on the crown of his head, smiling as her baby boy nearly purred in contentment. But that's not the only way to do it, and that's kind of the point. Why not just light an explosive and seal it in stasis right before it goes off? It'd be a lot simpler, wouldn't it? Well yeah, I guess, Naruto was beginning to understand. Just one more push. Or how about instead of having to buy and mix chemical compounds manually, why not just use separate seals to individually mix the atomic compounds to create the necessary elements themselves? Kushina grinned at the boy's wide-eyed expression. Or what about connecting those seals containing those compounds with a seal designed to trigger mitosis in cells? You could then deliberately remove or alter the time dilation process we typically associate with a seal. What would you get? A fucking farm. Naruto jumped up from his mother's lap. You could make a fucking bomb farm. Language, but yes. And if you combine all of those just right, what happens? You could make like an entire ocean of infinitely replicating paper bombs. Giddy, Naruto was near bouncing up and down. What kind of unhinged psychopath would do something like that? I want to meet them. And there it is. Kushina cheered, jumping to her feet and gathering her cackling son into her arms. Spinning him around in the air, she yelled to the heavens. Seals can do anything if you're crazy enough. So we're crazy, then. The craziest, Naruto. That's our superpower. Kushina cackled alongside her blonde-haired little monster. God, how she loved him. And that brings us back to the legacy seal. Tell me, baby, how would you take entire lifetimes of experience and pass them along to somebody else? He paused, sticking his tongue out and squinting his eyes in concentration. Well, first, you need to get the information. So, I'd make a jutsu that passively scans brain waves or records moments in time. And then I'd need another seal that could convert all of that into something that another person could process. That'd probably end up being another seal, in of itself. Naruto no longer needed any further prompting, he began rattling off ideas at rapid speed. Then you'd need to make it something that can be passed down. So you'd need to isolate a common factor that is present in all of our specific biology, and seal all of that into there. It'd need to be able to replicate itself and pass down its updated version to each new generation, but I don't see why that would be the thing that stops a person, by that point. Naruto paused again, suddenly looking annoyed. But how does a seal know what information is important? It can't possibly just record everything that you ever experience in your life. It would all just become this big mass of useless information polluting the good stuff. He paused for a moment. How do I know all of this? I'm not smart. Kushina laughed. You're far smarter than you know, Zame, and that's an excellent observation. To answer your question though, Uzumaki are taught from their youth to manually allocate information based on certain qualifying factors. So to go back to that notebook analogy, you can think of it like journaling every day with stuff you'll want your kids to know. It doesn't quite record memories, so much as it records relevant information associated with memories. At this, Naruto frowned. If that's the case, and I've just got this super repository of information left behind by generations of dead family members, then why have I never experienced it before? He received a mischievous grin as his response. Naruto, my love, what makes you think you haven't experienced it? I'm really not trying to be rude, Naruto started, pinching the bridge of his nose. But I think I would know if I was suddenly being bombarded with foreign memories and skills from someone else. Naruto, the legacy seal is a passive boon that responds most strongly to a need, not a desire. You lack the experience necessary to just reach for information and procure it out of nowhere. But even still, there are plenty of experiences you've had in your life that I'm sure you can attribute, at least partly, to what I'm describing. Kushina prodded him in the chest, then pointed outward. Naruto's eyes followed her gesture, his eyes widening as their surroundings shifted. The little blonde boy was grumbling over a ratty scroll with smudged ink. That's me. Naruto didn't expect a response from Kushina, far too transfixed with the sight before him. Is this my memory? Arg. This is so stupid. I can't believe Mizuki-sensei didn't have any better scrolls on the transformation jutsu. This is such bullshit. And yet, you were able to pull it off flawlessly when the time came to demonstrate it. Kushina's words rang true. Naruto remembered. Mizuki's shocked face stood out especially, with the knowledge the boy had now, of the man. You've been using it since we started talking about seals. You've already made egregious use of our shape-changing jutsu for that perverted transformation of yours. Naruto winced, trying to pretend that he wasn't in trouble. To my credit, I make for a very pretty lady. Catching the full meaning of her words, he frowned. Wait, shape-changing jutsu? I've just been using the regular transformation jutsu. Hardly, Kushina shot his explanation down, mercilessly. The standard transformation jutsu is little more than an illusory trick laid over your own body. It has no physical elements to it. You wouldn't be able to use it to physically interact with anything and still maintain the illusion. You sure as heck couldn't transform into a fully functional giant shuriken, and you most definitely would not have been able to pull off that conglomerate transformation to absorb your full, certainly not by using baby's first transformation jutsu. Taking in her son's wide-eyed expression, Kushina laughed. That jutsu you've been using was a creation of your great-grandfather's. He had a penchant for changing his form and weaponizing it for battle. They called him Kaido the Shapeshifter. That changed things. Naruto had developed his sexy jutsu when he was only 8. If his mother was right and he had no reason thus far not to believe her, then he'd been using this seal to scrape by for ages, now. So I've been using a highly advanced shape-shifting jutsu all this time, and no one told me. I'd be surprised if they did. It's not like most people even fully understand the limitations of their jutsu, a bad habit to get into, by the way. It's not like you would have been going around touching people, since you also would have been taught that the change wasn't truly solid. Anyone who would have recognized the jutsu would not have wanted to bring further attention to you by pointing it out. The third Hokage flashed to the forefront of his mind. Right, a thought occurred to him, then. Wait, I learned the shadow clone technique super fast, because I really needed to pass the Genin exam. Is that? Now you're really getting it, love. Once more, the scene bled into focus around them both. God. These instructions make like zero sense. I'm never going to master this jutsu in time. Naruto took a breath, absently adjusting the goggles on his head. Okay, clearly reading isn't my strong suit. I'm more of a doer, anyways. I'll just start trying stuff until it works. Forging the technique's iconic cross-shaped hand seal, Naruto shouted, Shadow Clone Jutsu. The point of the seal is to provide you with supplementary resources to help you thrive in circumstances where you most need the help. You needed to learn the jutsu ASAP, so you unconsciously drew on existing information to help you make it happen. It doesn't discount the work ethic needed to even learn a technique that advanced, but yes, you may not have succeeded in learning the Shadow Clone Jutsu so swiftly without it. Is that why I have so much chakra? At Kushina's raised eyebrow, Naruto hastened to explain himself. You said this seal of ours gives mind, body, and chakra, sorta. We've established that the mind isn't in question, so what about my chakra? I've got a crazy amount, and Naruto paused, realizing all of a sudden just how lightheaded he was getting. Sorry, I think I forgot to breathe. He allowed his mother to cuddle him yet again as he regained his breath. He didn't think he'd ever get tired of hugs. To answer your question, kind of. Kushina fumbled, trying to put her explanation into proper words. It's likely that your reserves would have been huge already between natural genetics and your unique circumstances. I was the Kyuubi's host before you, you see. Bulldozing past that particular reveal with little more than a later, Kushina added, you were pretty much a neighbor to the Kyuubi my entire pregnancy, then it was sealed inside of you, to boot. Your reserves were always going to be some combination of silly, wacky, and goofy because of that. The legacy seal just adds another layer to that. It works by essentially stockpiling chakra from previous generations, taking imprints of our chakra systems, and progressively building this massive network that is, well, for lack of a better word, implanted into you as you develop. Add absolutely bonkers to those earlier adjectives, and you've got your chakra system. Naruto really wanted to address the whole previous host to the Kyuubi detail, but opted to let it slide for now, for the sake of addressing the other elephant in the room. He'd remember to ask, later. So I've got like, multiple chakra networks. Is that why my chakra control is hot garbage? Kushina offered him a sympathetic look. The opposite, really. As complex as your chakra system is, you should be able to effortlessly control all of that power inside of you. The seal was designed by our great-great-great ancestors explicitly with the sheer quantity in mind as a potential drawback. The reason you can't can be blamed on the Kyuubi actively interfering with your chakra control. Also, you don't so much have multiple chakra networks as you do have one massively complex one, which is composed of many smaller, micro-networks. Sounds like multiple chakra networks to me. Naruto cheekily ignored his mother's mock glare. So how do I get the fox to stop bullying my chakra control? Do I gotta beat it up first? The stronger you get, the more effective you'll become at suppressing the Kyuubi's influence. As you grow, it'll have less impact on your control, and you'll be able to benefit more from what you've got. Taking pity on his frustrated shout, Kushina sighed. Luckily for you, you seem to have inherited my chains earlier than I would have expected. I was nearly 15 when I first manifested my adamantine chains. What exactly are adamantine chains? Naruto was honestly getting pretty tired of having one question replaced with like 10 more. Wait, never mind. I know huh? Legacy seal, Kushina sang. It can be a bit confusing at first, but we'll whip you into shape just fine, Zama. Naruto matched her grin. He'd always felt jealous of his peers for having unique abilities of their own. Shikamaru had his cool shadow techniques, Sasuke had his Sharingan, hell, even Kiba got a cool dog that he could talk to. This legacy seal that his mother was talking about, is this my blood limit? He knew that his fellow genin all descended from fairly prestigious clans, barring Sakura. They all had inherited unique abilities that were seemingly exclusive to their clans. Maybe this was his. His mother didn't respond, for she knew that he didn't need her to, this time. Yeah, there had been enough questions about this, for now. So how do I use this to absolutely bully Nichi in the Chunin exams? Kushina grinned. I'll show you. Any sign of improvement? The medic nin assigned to Naruto's care shortly bowed to Jiraiya, considering his question. A bit, Jiraiya-sama. We're sure now that we'll be able to save Naruto-kun's arm, though he may have chronic pain in it, even after it is fully recovered. That was good. Well, not amazing, the pain was bad. But it was better than losing an arm in its entirety. He'll be glad to hear that. Anything else? The medic, Kibito or something. Jiraiya hadn't been paying attention, adjusted his glasses, looking over the boy's chart. Not much, though that's probably for the best, if I may. There's a world of difference between now and when you first brought him in 9 days ago. Working through all those chains is proving to be quite challenging. Still, he's recovering well all the same. His bones are mostly on the mend. We were unable to salvage his eye at first, but whatever is going on inside that cocoon of his seems to be doing its own work, as well. We're optimistic, if a bit uncertain, that the issue may sort itself out, at this rate. At his final words, Jiraiya let out a sigh of relief. Thank you for your service, young man. The young man in question blushed at his thanks. Oh please sir. It's no trouble at all. It's my job. He laughed, as if at a joke that Jiraiya must have missed. Besides, much to my shame, those chains of his seem to actually be doing most of the work for us. They're siphoning excess chakra from his surroundings as well as the, well, you know. And they're using it to heal him from inside. Not wanting to speak any further on the matter, he began to make a hasty departure. In any case, I'll leave you with him. I still have other patients to take care of. Please let somebody know immediately if he wakes. At Jiraiya's nod, Kibito left, dumping a pair of shredded gloves into a wastebasket as he departed. Jiraiya waited a few moments, making sure the young man was well and truly gone before taking a seat in a simple folding chair, taking care to avoid the still writhing chains as he did so. Hey kiddo, he started, wringing his hands as he did so. He knew better than to touch anything, by now. The still raw scars on his hands and forearms told him that he still wasn't exactly welcome here, as far as the boy's chakra seemed to be concerned. I see you're still pissed, that's fair. I deserve it, 110%. Look, I'm really sorry I let you down like I did. I know you probably wouldn't want anything to do with me after all of this, and that's totally fair, but right now I just want to know that you'll be okay. Jiraiya gripped his forearm, admiring the scars that the boy's chains had left on him days prior. I'm really impressed, by the way. Those chains of yours are scary as hell, far scarier than your mother's were at that age. The doctor had to reattach my whole pinky after you were done mauling my dumb ass. Not mad, by the way. He deserved that, and more. Of that, he had no question. Ah, you probably don't want to hear this old man ramble. Get well soon, buddy. Knowing better than to overstay his welcome, Jiraiya left before those chains decided to lash out. At least he was making progress. The first few days, he'd been unable to even get a word in without the third being present. The kid would probably never forgive him, but he'd at least do whatever was needed to make things right between them. As he left, he nearly bumped into a young girl. Whoops, my bad. Plastering a cheerful expression onto his face, Jiraiya patted her blue hair as he walked around her, grinning to himself as she ducked her head down and blushed. Naruto stared out past the coastline, watching the waves dance. The hidden village of Uzashigakure didn't really seem like much of a village, he had told Kushina. The closest thing he could compare it to would have been a large tropical island. Oh, it had the infrastructure to be one, but it just felt like it was missing the mark entirely. It was calling Yuzu less than what it actually was. Why be a village when you could simply be more? There were expansive beaches and crazy, lush green jungles in equal measures. Massive trees loitered about, teeming with vibrant greenery and succulent fruits. They swayed in the wind as if dancing to a beat that the boy was truly starting to feel in his very bones. God, he just wanted to pluck a mango from one of those stems. If only he could. The sun had settled lazily above, bathing the island in its warm rays. Naruto wondered how his mother's skin remained so pale, what with the constant exposure. A question for another time. To his knowledge, it was early in the afternoon, which meant that classes were still in session at his mother's academy. A hand took his own, shaking him out of his stupor. Come. Kushina gently urged him along, and he followed. You'll want to see this. Steering him forward, the pair continued on a slightly overgrown path, which Naruto knew by now led to the central square where trading was often done. He could see dozens of men and women, sporting all shades of reddish hair. Idly, he tugged at his own, wondering if he should dye it. The thought left him as he spotted the tiniest flecks of red at the tips of his braids. Catching his mother's eye, he could tell that she, too, had noticed. Come, Zama. That is a conversation for later. Dutifully, her son obeyed, following his mother along the largest path, which he now knew led to one of several academies, each of them allegedly held major significance in their culture. The Uzumaki are artists, craftsmen, and academics. Kushina's emphasis on the present tense did not escape the boy. We have warriors and ninjas, there is a difference. But it's not really what our clan was known for, son. We gain our reputation as revolutionaries by doing just that. We take that which is old and refine it into something greater. We take that which is unknown and make it our own. Which means I'm going back to school. Naruto sighed. Give it a chance. Kushina pleaded, and he knew that he would. He was glad he did. The Uzumaki Academy of Motion was their first stop. It was massive, and structured more like a dojo than a proper school as he knew them. Children, just a bit younger than he, were hard at work on the floor, sectioned off into pairs. What are they doing? Naruto couldn't take their eyes off the rapid movements of the children before him. Dancing? It sure as heck didn't seem like any dance that he had ever seen. They were fast and fluid, like water. Then they were weightless and free, like the wind. One moment they pranced about in all manners of grace. Then another, someone was flying across the room in a crumpled heap. From the masses, one child, years his junior, dropped down low, twirling on the balls of her bare feet, and whipping her arms about like a snake. Crimson hair flared out as she did so, coating the ground in coils, reminiscent of the animal she was copying. Then, she did a sharp cartwheel from her low position, holding her arms before her like a mantis's claws and swaying unnaturally. This looks like taijutsu, though. Surely he wasn't mistaken, right? That girl looked like she could kill him, and easily, at that. In our culture, there really is no difference. Kushina bore his confusion with a chuckle, ruffling his hair. Every Uzumaki child learns the dances of our people, and the many forms that come along with them. Each dance is based on an elemental alignment, and their forms are based on ideas that embody that alignment. I want you to learn them all, you understand me? Watch. Naruto did so. He watched the girl wade through dozens of other peers, all a fair bit older than her. She easily subdued them all, flipping over a boy in his late teens, and planting her index finger into the base of his neck. Snake's bite, Kushina muttered to her son as the small girl landed, then landing into a neat roll as the boy fell, unmoving. Planting her foot into the ground, there was an audible crack in the air, as the girl rushed a pair of older girls with a single bound. Leafhoppers bound. Tensing both of her legs together, the girl squatted low and spun like a top to avoid a palm strike and high kick from each, respectively. She twirled underneath and past them. In an instant, she was now fully behind them. The younger girl easily leapt over a sweeping kick that attempted to ward her off, flipping parallel to the ground, and brutally smashing a foot each into each girl's head. Zebra's kick, she muttered. One fell and did not rise, but the other was tougher. The older girl snapped back to attention, keeping her footing as she tried to snatch her foe's left leg. Naruto watched as the young girl planted her palm into the ground for leverage, her right leg snapping up, and then down for a hook kick that finally grounded the opponent for good. What's that one? Naruto leaned forward, awe-stricken by the girl's performance. Oh, that's just a regular hook kick. Snorting, Naruto watched as the little crimson-haired ball of fury mowed through her competition, taking down a dozen other students in the span of half a minute. Her amethyst-colored eyes flashed around, taking in her surroundings with intense focus, disrupted only by the mirthful grin on her face. Is it you? Kushina laughed. Oh heavens, no. This was your grand auntie, Mito Uzumaki. Blanching, the boy hurried to confirm. The one who married the Shodaime Hokage. The very same, Kushina confirmed. She really was in a league of her own. I was good, but never that good. I thought the point of the next generation was to surpass the previous one. It really wasn't meant as a jab, but Naruto winced, all the same. Kushina only snorted. Listen, darling. Mommy invested all of her skill points into mastering her super ultra turbo chains, so that the big bad fox monster wouldn't break free and eat all her friends. Naruto snorted right back, matching her banter. From what you told me, she held the Kyuubi even before you did. Sounds to me like you just didn't have hands. Oh, I had hands, darling. The scenery shifted with her words, and Naruto recognized that they were now in Konoha. A red-haired girl, this time only slightly younger and far angrier than he, was absolutely throttling a boy. The leaf-nin forehead protector on the boy's head clattered to the ground as she broke his nose with a vicious stomp. Then the girl snatched it off the ground and punted it overhead for good measure, letting it fall into the grasp of a looming tree. Is it you, bullying a fresh genin? Naruto raised an eyebrow, unimpressed. As an academy student, Kushina practically sang, with pride. Her son chuckled back. I beat a genin as an academy student. And I'm very proud of you, my sweet handsome angel boy who can do no wrong. With a hump, Kushina crossed her arms above her chest and turned her nose upwards, a ghost of a smile on her face. But I definitely had hands. I'm just saying it sounds to me like beating up a genin is like the bare minimum that you should be accomplishing when us other two holders are clearing that bar, easily. Hey, she only got the Kyuubi to screw with her when she was already an adult, Kushina interjected. I was just a kid when I got that giant fuzzy jerk. Naruto simply fixed the woman with a deadpan stare, willing her to remember who she was trying to justify herself to. In any case. Moving back to Auntie Mito. The scene shifted yet again, once more showing him the side of his grand aunt beating up a bunch of students as a tiny child. Just because you can access her experiences doesn't mean you can suddenly throw down like she could. If only it were that easy. Kushina cackled. If you want to do what she could, you'll need to take all that she left for us and make it your own. Blinking, Naruto cupped his chin in thought. And how do I do that? He didn't think he could mimic Mito's movements in 1,000 years, and she was nearly half his age in this memory. Put yourself in her shoes, Naruto. Become her. A pause. Then, ascend her. The explanation was pretty cryptic, but he understood her at least, he thought he did. The memory had stilled with his intent. Naruto approached the girl, her glittering eyes now mirrored by his own. With a deep breath, he stepped into her space, melding with the memory. The scene was replayed, except now it was him who was blitzing about, taking down his seniors with ease. Or was he her? It was disorienting. A migraine built up in her sinuses and Mito felt like his brain was going to burst out of her skull. Everything felt heavy and he began to choke, drowning in a sea of thoughts and memories and experiences, and within just a few moments, he was violently ejected from it all. Naruto tried to roll to his feet, but found no strength in any of his limbs. The pain in his head boiled over, and he violently began to gag, vomiting so hard that he began to cry. His nose burned. His throat burned. Why did everything always have to burn? He missed Haku. Kushina's lips brushed his forehead. No luck. She helped her son unsteadily reach his feet. I feel like I'm dying. Once again, Naruto fell on his butt, suppressing the urge to curse. It was like trying to swim through mud, backwards, but a fat guy was sitting on my chest and fondling my brain through my nose with a whole soldering iron. That's what I said. Gathering her son into her embrace, Kushina planted another kiss onto the crown of his head. As you can see, drawing from memories is one thing. Making those memories your own is a completely different beast, and that's kind of the main hurdle that comes with the seal. I was never able to last longer than a few moments. It doesn't really get easier, so much as you just learn to grit your teeth and bear it. Her son was cradling his head in his hands, lightly whimpering. Kushina's heart broke all over again at his pain. I'm sorry, Zama. We can stop for now. No? Kushina paused, at that one-word response, courtesy of her son. His eyes were completely bloodshot, two thick lines of blood eking out from each nostril. Still, his voice was firm. His mother knew that he would not stop until he succeeded. Kushina gestured to the girl before them, who had once again paused. This time, she almost seemed as though she were staring directly at the duo. Directly at Naruto. Show me what you've got. I'll master this in record time. Believe it. Naruto's eyes met Mito's and once more took on an amethyst hue. When Jiraiya came to visit Naruto on this day, he found that the room was already occupied. The dark-haired little girl from the other day was there. She squeaked like a mouse when she saw him enter. Oh, hello. I am sorry, I didn't. Don't worry about it, Jiraiya interrupted. She looked like a Hyuga. The pupilless, white eyes were a dead giveaway, though hers seemed to be tinted lavender. Are you a friend of Naruto's? The girl nodded, shyly hiding into her tan, baggy coat. Now that he was really looking at her, they did seem to be about the same age. You went to school with him then? Once again, he saw her nod. I take it you're not the talkative sort. Jiraiya snorted at the girl's hasty apologies, quickly turning his attention to Naruto's cocoon. I'm surprised you managed to get this close to him without any issues. Even the medics have reported it being a fight just to get near. The kid must really like you. The girl's face lit up with a furious blush, and Jiraiya noted the barely suppressed quirk of her lips at his words. After a moment, she sighed, sadly. I just really needed to see him to know that he's okay. I hear that. Palming his face, he snatched a spare chair from the closet, taking a seat a few feet off from them. I hear he's on a good track toward recovery. Oh, I'm Jiraiya. What's your name, kiddo? There was a pause, then Hinata Hyuga, sir. Yes, I went to school with Naruto-kun. Ah, yeah, I think he mentioned you, a few times. Jiraiya had to suppress a snort. Yeah, more like a few dozen. Ah, really poor girl. She sounded way too excited. It took everything he had, not to tease her. Yeah. I trained him for a bit before this happened. He kept talking about you, said you got put in here by some Hyuga super genius, the one he's fighting in the exams, actually. Ah, Hinata frowned, nervously pushing her index fingers together. A tick, perhaps. Ah yes, I'm still in care after I needed surgery. Jiraiya locked onto the faraway look in her eyes. She looked close to crying. I'm sorry to have caused him any concern. The response was clearly rehearsed. Who has she practiced it for? That wouldn't do. Don't bullshit with me, kid. As if to soothe the harshness of his words, Jiraiya planted a palm on the kid's head, ruffling her hair. She went stiff as a statue, so he swiftly aborted that strategy. Don't apologize for something like that. Naruto wouldn't have talked my ear off about you if he didn't think you were worth talking about, and he wouldn't have worried if you weren't worth worrying about. After a moment, he added, he also said you were strong as shit. Hinata gaped at the man. Oh, and no, I'm really not. Well, you see, I'm just. Enough of that. Jiraiya cut in, bluntly. If he says you're strong as shit, then you're strong as shit. Just take the compliment, kid. Why yes. Thank you. Clearly she didn't seem to believe in herself very much, if the lingering doubt in her eyes was anything to go by. Still, Jiraiya didn't quite have the patience to battle back all of the girl's insecurities for her. Let Naruto fight that battle, once he was out of that damned cocoon. Tell me, how did you ever find out about his internment? Naruto's hospitalization was something of an open secret. After all, one couldn't exactly keep something like this quiet for long, but there was certainly no reason to give any potential enemies an opportunity to hurt the kid, as he was. Still, his team must have been informed, at the least. It was common courtesy. The Uchiha and their sensei were out of the village, so their absence could be forgiven, albeit reluctantly. The pink-haired one though, well, he hadn't seen her. The fact that not one of them had shown. Never mind that. Jiraiya turned his attention back to Hinata, a question on his mind. Actually, I'm surprised the guards even let you in. Friend or not, she wasn't his teammate. The Anbu had no obligation to grant the girl access. You guards. The girl went a bit pale. I swear, I really didn't mean to. Don't worry about it. If you didn't see them, then they very much let you pass. He supposed he wasn't exactly surprised, now that he'd gotten a chance to speak to her. The kid didn't seem to have a deceitful bone in her body, unless this was all a ruse, in which case he supposed she was super duper deceitful. Hey kid, what do you specialize in? The question clearly threw the kid off. Pardon. You're genin, right? What is your sensei teaching you? Goodness, Jiraiya hated having to explain himself. TR tracking, I think. You think? Buckling under his incredulous stare, Hinata bowed her head and swallowed. TT tracking and capture, sir. Her voice was nearly a whimper. Great, now he felt bad. Relax a bit, Hinata, was it? At her nod, he huffed. I'm not pissed at you. I'm just an asshole. Oh? Hinata blinked a few times, unable to find any words to respond with. Pinching the bridge of his nose, Jiraiya huffed. Why was he having so much trouble talking to some kid? Time to switch gears, then. Hey, you never answered my first question. Who told you Naruto was hospitalized? Well, sorry, you see. Hinata paused, taking a breath. No one told me. I'd recognize Naruto-kun's chakra anywhere. As if prompted by her words, the veins surrounding her eyes began to lightly bulge, and Jiraiya knew she had activated her clan's ocular jutsu, the Byakugan. When I saw this, trailed off for a moment, pointing limply toward the cocoon. I knew it was him. But something is wrong. His chakra is all different, sir. I've heard the old man the Hokage had a couple of your clanmates take a look at him a few days back. They said they didn't even recognize him. I wouldn't go that far. Hinata smiled, and the veins around her eyes receded. Rubbing them, she added, he's become so bright, like a star I can't look at him for too long anymore. The girl looked particularly disappointed by that, and Jiraiya couldn't help but laugh. Sir. He deigned not to answer her question. Instead, Jiraiya simply gazed at Naruto and chuckled. Like a star, huh? How fitting. Hinata blushed. It's beautiful. Clearly there was some history between these two. You his girlfriend or something. The elder had to choke back a laugh as his companion began to stutter, furiously. Look, I'm not trying to make things weird for you. The kid's important to me, and I'm asking you an honest question. Jiraiya tried to inject some sternness into his tone, though he guessed that his grin must have kneecapped it. You two seem pretty close, at least. Hinata paused, then. Her blush melted off her face, suddenly little more than a faint dusting on her cheeks. We aren't really. There was something truly sad in her eyes that made Jiraiya's heart ache. He knew that look very intimately. He had worn it many times in his life, after all. Ah shit. Did you two have a falling out or something? She seemed like a good enough kid. She clearly cared a ton about his student. It really wasn't his business, but he couldn't help but give a damn. Oh, no. It's just Hinata sighed, helplessly. I'm honestly surprised that he was speaking about me at all. Sometimes I wonder if he even knows that I exist. Well, it sounds to me like there has been a miscommunication between the two of you. The kid thinks the world of you. Now far be it from me to tell you how to handle your relationships. Jiraiya ignored her sudden blush. But it sounds to me like you both care a whole lot more about each other than either of you know. I can tell you for certain that in the week or so that I had him, your name came up leaps and bounds over anyone else's. After a moment he added, that includes his teammates, by the way. Jiraiya ignored Hinata's expression, a clean splice of embarrassment and shock. Shifting his eyes past her, he opted to address them both, this time. Take it from this old bastard with far too much experience on his hands. For better or for worse, thoughts of his old teammates, Tsunade and Orochimaru both, came forth. Whether your feelings are romantic or even just that of friends, don't spend your days wishing you told somebody how much they meant to you. You never know how long you'll have with them before they're gone. The look in Hinata's eyes told him his words had reached her. Yes, sir. Kushina held Naruto's hair back as he once again heaved onto the floor. Nothing came out anymore, but really, it's just a gentlemanly thing to do, she had told him. Their son had been trying and failing to sync with Mito Uzumaki for days. The breaks he took were few and far between. Kushina was concerned for him, sure. The results, however, showed for themselves. You're up to 18 seconds. Compared to the barely 3 seconds of his first attempt, there really was a world of difference. Naruto groaned. I'll try for 20, next. Pulling himself to his feet, he wiped the blood from his nose and prepared for another attempt. Frowning, Kushina tugged at his arm. Natsuyaki, unbelievable. I really think you should take a break, even if just for a few minutes, Zama. Unacceptable. They didn't have the luxury of time. Not while Niji's face remained unpunched. I'll try one more time. Naruto didn't wait for a response from his mother, instead taking the patiently waiting Mito's hand. His eyes began to glow, once more mirroring her own amethyst ones, as their resonance began. Mito as a young adult was far faster than she had any right to be, and her natural flexibility made Naruto's bones creak, trying to mimic her movements. Still, he forced his discomfort into a far corner of his mind as he fell in sync, meticulously acting out his predecessor's past. Their bodies became one, their thoughts followed. The duo was like lightning across the battlefield. Bodies dropped en masse as they wove across the ground level, incapacitating enemy ninja. Pausing for a moment, they glared at the thinning ranks of enemy ninja. The forehead protectors of the hidden cloud village stared back, as one. Their senses stretched across the surrounding area like an all-encompassing blanket, and Naruto knew before he even saw them that an attack was coming. As Mito's body moved in preparation, Naruto thanked his luck that they still seemed to be on the same page. A hail of shuriken attacked them from all angles, but they had sensed it coming. An evasive style, then. Dance of water. Eel's path. Their body contorted as if they had no bones at all, mirroring this particular dance's namesake. They ducked under a pair of spinning blades, rolling twice and flipping over another. Tilting their head, they allowed another shuriken to whiz past them, then followed up by slinking around another trio. Then, Mito's hand whipped out, wreathed in a thin barrier of chakra. They deflected an incoming shuriken into the path of another, then slunk around thrice more in rapid succession to weave the last few. In an instant, they had effortlessly wove through the storm of steel without so much as a scratch. Fully clearing the attack, they sensed the follow-up in the form of a massive buildup of chakra. It tasted like ozone, so Naruto heeded her lead and dropped low, memorizing the way Mito's body contorted against the ground, and evaded the electric surge that whizzed over their head. Mito's leg snapped out, collapsing the chest of a flanking enemy ninja. He crumpled onto his back, spasming. The other ninja halted their charge, instead making space. Above. They palmed a dagger as stiletto, good for stabbing, then they planted a hand into the ground and vaulted upward, flipping to safety as a heavy foot slammed down where their had it been. The pair brandished their blade before them, as the shaggy-haired cloud ninja ripped his foot from the ground. He mirrored Mito's stance, a challenging sneer twisting on his lips as he crossed a heavy crescent blade in front of himself, one-handed. A duel, then. Fine by me. The opponents stared each other down for a half-second, then a spark of tension erupted between them. He's going to rush. Mito's memory couldn't hear him, but it was clear all the same that she had sensed it, too. True enough, the enemy ninja ripped forward at incredible speeds, his body wreathed in electricity. Mito huffed, pushing forward to meet his charge, dragging a flagging Naruto along for the ride. Matches advance. Dance of storms. Kraken waltz. Her knife-clad limb blurred into 10, and a dozen and a half clangs rang out as she used the tiny blade to parry every enemy stroke. Metals collided with one another in a deadly dervish, Mito stalwartly refusing to give any ground. Pushing forward, Mito tilted her body to the side, her spine bending her at a low angle to weave a diagonal slash. Tensing her body, she vaulted upwards and spun, her left leg taking a wide curve to collide with her opponent's face. Something gave, probably his left orbital, and Mito knew to press her advantage. Kicking off, she landed at a shallow distance away, then twirled out of the way of an angry lunge. Mito kept to his left, where she suspected his sight to be impaired. Leaping over the wide swing, she then slammed her foot into the man's elbow from behind, and drove his heavy blade deep into the ground. Smartly, her opponent released the blade and attempted to backfist her as they descended. Wasting no time, she snagged the man's arm, wrapping her legs around it at the elbow and burying the blade into his bicep, severing the ligaments. The Cloud Ninja cried out, then attempted to slam her into the ground with the last of his arm strength. Suffusing her chakra throughout her body like a cushion, Mito easily absorbed the fall and rolled to the balls of her feet. She raised her chakra output threefold and split it. Her immaculate chakra control was put fully on display as she augmented her kickoff while simultaneously bracing her legs. In an instant, she had taken off towards her foe, blurring into a speed far faster than he could react. Using his one good arm, he futilely tried to ward her off with a hastily procured kunai, but she read the movement and evaded by taking a short leap. Then Mito brutally slammed her palm into his shoulder. Something popped painfully in her foe's joint as she threw him off balance as she vaulted overhead. The Cloud Ninja dropped his kunai in favor of ripping his crescent blade from the ground. A sloppy, reverse grip swing tried to catch her and protect the ninja's back all at once. She leaned backwards, allowing him to barely miss. His front was wide open. Mito's blade flashed, and Mito tumbled to the ground, trembling and choking. Everything hurt, and she knew she was well past her limit. Naruto. Ah. He was disassociating again. Naruto fought down a spasm and tried to focus. Mito's instincts ripped through him like the blade of her knife, peeling away at his flesh and stabbing away at him in a place he couldn't protect. Mito no, Naruto groaned. His head was fuzzy, again. He needed to center himself. Deep breaths, son. Yeah, he needed to take deep breaths and screw his head back on. That was all. How long was that? At Kushina's silence, he gritted his teeth. That bad, huh? 16 seconds. Fuck. Naruto clutched at his hair, pulling frustratedly at his hair. A loose braid came undone, joining the multitude of stray strands in a pile of half-braided, half-spiky locks. Don't say it, he hissed, sensing his mother was about to chide his choice of language. This is a lesson you are going to need to learn, sooner or later. You can't just brute force everything in your life with no consequences. Kushina knew he didn't want to hear it right then, but he needed to. You need to learn when to dial it back a couple dozen notches, Naruto. Alright. You were right. With a huff, Naruto threw himself down onto his back, staring into the endless expanse of white above him. I'll take some rest and get back to the grind after. I just don't understand what the problem is. Were he and Granny Mito really that incompatible? Sensing the direction of his thoughts, Kushina pinched his nose, making him scrunch it up in irritation. You're going about this so wrong. You're assuming you're doing poorly or making bad progress, Naruto. You've straight up sextupled your progress since we started. Moreover, you're practically dead on your feet, and you still managed so much better than your first attempt. We'll stop for a few moments so you can recover, and then I guarantee you will see huge improvement. But I'm still disassociating. And the pain it hurts so much, clearly I'm still doing something wrong. You're dissociating because you're stretching well past your limit of what your mind can handle right now. You're experiencing aches for the same reason. You're being overwhelmed by Auntie Mito's memories and chakra because you're overdoing it. The only way you're going to get better at resonance is to simply build your limit up, so it's harder for you to hit it. You can't do that if you're constantly on the verge of giving yourself brain damage, you doof. Now quit stressing yourself out when you're supposed to be resting. Come here and let me fix your hair, you look terrible. Yeah, fine. Rest really sounded nice, right about now. Naruto's eyes panned over to his mother, who had dropped down beside him, swiftly working away at his unkempt locks. How did you learn to do it? Kushina suddenly went red in the face. Well, don't make fun of me. I'll cry. She huffed, seeing her son rolling her eyes at her. Kushina nonetheless took it as confirmation. I met your father. There was a moment's pause, then Naruto blanched. How the hell did that help? Side-eyeing him, Kushina clasped her hands behind her head. Your limit builds up as you grow stronger. At his nod, she pointed to his chest. Strength isn't just about how much chakra you have or how big your muscles are. Willpower, experience, and intellect are just as important when it comes to one's overall capacity for strength. Yeah, I get that. Naruto hummed. It's like the scrolls from the second exam. The earth is the body, you build it up through physical exercise. Heaven is the mind, which gets stronger through study and experience. Exactly. You're missing one, though. That, which lies between. The spirit. Earth, heaven, and spirit are all factored in when it comes to how you maintain yourself during resonance. Right now, you're still recovering from your wounds out there, so your body isn't in the best shape. You're young, so experience and knowledge will come as you age and learn more. Learning from your ancestors will build up both. Thus, getting better at resonance will ironically help you get better at resonance, if that makes sense. Kushina chuckled. And my spirit? Naruto frowned, he knew where this was going. As for your spirit, Kushina trailed off for a moment, throwing a concerned side-eye her son's way. You tell me. Do you feel particularly spirited, right about now? No, he really didn't. Getting to spend the time he had with his mother was a blessing, but it couldn't suddenly undo the years of pain, least of all when he knew she would have to go, eventually. The chakra she'd stolen from the Kyuubi was a drop in the bucket for the overgrown rat. Still, he didn't think it'd give them a chance to steal some more. He sure as hell didn't expect it to give any, willingly. So meeting Dad helped your spirit, then? In a way, yes. Even before we fell in love, I think he was the first friend I ever made after coming to Konoha. I was very lonely. Yeah, Naruto groaned. I hear that. Rolling his eyes, he added, sometimes I wonder if it's even worth going back out there. It's not like I've got anyone out there waiting for me, you know. Kushina's response was immediate. Not true. She rolled onto her side to look her son in the eyes. She prepared for this. I've got on good authority that you've got a cheerleader of your own, over on the outside. The scene began to change, depicting a hospital room, covered in chains. Yurei-sama had left, nearly an hour ago. Hinata knew that she should follow suit, head back to her room to get her own rest. Her doctor would be irritated if she had to come find her, again. Hinata really didn't want to be berated by her father again for disappearing from her hospital bed. She strongly suspected that his irritation with her had more to do with how she made him look, rather than any real concern. Still, she didn't want to invoke his ire, for the consequences were far from ideal. But she couldn't, not while Jiraiya-sama's words remained with her. Don't spend your days wishing you told somebody how much they meant to you. If Naruto's teacher. If Jiraiya-sama was to be believed, then Naruto had talked about her plenty, to the man. He cared about her, she hadn't even known. But she should have. Naruto was kind to her well, he was kind to everyone. Oh, he could be crass, at times. Oh, and petty. Very petty. But never without cause. He'd always been so sweet to her. It was just one of many reasons that oh God, she couldn't even say it in her own head. It was one of the many reasons that she liked him. Goodness, she felt so pathetic. And yet, Naruto liked her. Or at least, he cared enough to talk Jiraiya's ear off about her. He cared enough to visit her while she was fighting for her life in the hospital, courtesy of Nijini-san. She had never known, but she should have, and that was what was bothering her. Did Naruto-kun know that she cared about him too? Memories surfaced of a moment between them, one of the rare few that she was realizing. And Naruto-kun. Hinata almost lost her nerve then and there, as her orange-clad crush perked up and caught her eyes. Immediately, she averted hers, dropping them down to his jumpsuit. It was ruined, partly from his battles in the forest of death. A few scratches, courtesy of his fight with her teammate, stood out. A bit of skin peeked out from his ruined clothes, so Hinata once more averted her eyes, this time onto her fiddling hands. Her heart was racing. Naruto tilted his head and squinted, a moment, before smiling. Oh hey Hinata. Sorry I had to smack Kiba around in front of the rest of your team. Hee, no hard feelings, right? Hinata knew he meant it. He was just honest, like that. And no. I mean you two had a great fight. CC congratulations on your win. God, why was it so hard to just talk to people? Hinata hated hearing herself speak. She hated being unable to get a single sentence out without tripping over herself. She wished she had his confidence, to just say what she meant and damn the consequences. Naruto looked shocked. Oh, thanks. I didn't think you'd well, I appreciate it. His hand flew up to scratch the back of his head. He was nervous, all of a sudden, why? Tell Kiba I'm down for a rematch anytime. I'll kick his butt as many times as it takes to make him respect me. She knew he would. Naruto never backed down from a challenge. Even when he really should. I wanted to give you this. Thrusting her hands forward, he offered him the jar of medicinal cream she'd kept enclosed between her hands. She knew it was good she'd never dared to give somebody bad medicine. Still, a part of her worried that he'd refuse it, all the same. She needn't have worried. Deep breaths, Hinata. I made it, and myself. With a cheer, Naruto plucked a small jar from her palms, turning it over in his grip with wide eyes. You made this. For me. Holy crap, Hinata, you're so cool. Were it anyone else who had said that, even her own father, especially her own father, Hinata would have thought they were mocking her. But Naruto was different. He was so kind, and she knew again that he meant what he'd said. Even still, she wanted to cry, because he hadn't understood. That jar contained all of her pent-up feelings, all of the things she'd wanted to say to him, but never had the spine to just open her dumb mouth and say. And he hadn't heard a single word. Hinata wanted to say them herself, she wanted to, so badly. Instead, all that came out was, I hope it helps. She trudged off with her heart in shambles because the boy she adored just didn't get how she felt. And whose fault was that, exactly? Hinata wanted to bash her own head in. Here she was, feeling sorry for herself while Naruto was fighting for his life. She hadn't picked up on Naruto's own feelings either, she hadn't even thought that he knew her name. All this time, he considered her a good friend, while she'd been stuck just trying to get him to know she existed. How silly was it that she'd gone home crying like a baby over that? Why, even because he hadn't swept her into his arms and kissed her in the middle of the arena. Why, when she didn't even have the guts to just spell it out for him. Naruto-kun had nearly died before she ever got a chance to tell him how she felt. Feelings were hard, they always found a way to kick her butt. But Hinata was getting really tired of losing. And Naruto-kun. Is that Hinata? Naruto frowned, pushing himself up to his knees and shuffling forward. What's going on? She came to visit you. Kushina smiled, plopping herself down beside her son. Stroking his hair, she pointed at the blue-haired girl. As a matter of fact, she's been coming to visit you nearly every day since you showed up there. But why? Her son's voice sounded so lost, broken, even. It made Kushina want to cry for her boy. Why do you think, Zame? Naruto really didn't need her to spell it out for him. She wouldn't. He needed to say it, for himself. Naruto-kun, Hinata paused, taking a deep breath. Then, steady as a rock, she said, I'm sorry, I'm not good at speaking, or talking about my feelings. Just I miss you. Please get better soon. After a moment, she added, you're the strongest person I know, so I'm sure you'll come back. But also, you're special to me, truly. And you promised you'd beat Niji Naisen. You never go back on your word, right? She sighed, stepping forward and pressing a palm against the big cocoon that he knew housed his still mending body. Naruto felt the warmth of her touch. Come back stronger than ever, and let's have ramen when you wake up. Please. Now thoroughly red in the face, Hinata whispered a meek see you later, and departed in a hurry. Kushina remained silent, allowing her son to process that moment. Hold on. Naruto swallowed, his eyes prickling with tears. Was he really about to cry? He felt so stupid. Hinata thinks I'm special. But I mean why? Oh, they'd had some nice talks, where well he tended to do most of the talking, and she'd given him that cream that sealed Kiba's scratches right up. But he'd never imagined that she thought so highly of him. She's been coming to see me every day, you said. With a huff, Kushina rested her chin atop his head. Is it really so unthinkable that someone out there would find you worthy of their love? What about that sensei of yours? Kakashi sucks. No, the other one. I hate Jiraiya. The really nice one, Kushina exclaimed, lightly smacking her giggling son over the head. Oh, Iruka-sensei. Why didn't you just say so? Ignoring his mother's glower, Naruto thought of the man. He and I haven't really talked much since I graduated, you know. A pang of guilt struck him. Not like I've made much of an effort on my end, to be fair. Yeah, that was probably his bad. With a huff, Kushina pushed forward. Your teammates, any standouts, there? Sakura-chan is, Naruto trailed off, trying to find the words to describe his pink-haired teammate. Sakura was what? Pretty. Hastened by Kushina's exasperated glare, he rushed to add, she's also really well she's really strong-willed, I guess. She's super smart. I notice you didn't say she was nice. He frowned. She can be, just not to me okay, point taken. Sasuke's a jerk, but he had my back in wave, so I guess he's alright. I guess I'd like to be friends with him, if he stopped calling me a dumbass all the time. Oh, I guess Konohamaru counts as a friend. I mean, I'm more of his rival than anything, but that counts, right? There was a long pause as Kushina waited for her son to continue. After a moment, she pushed again. And Hinata. Well, Hinata's really shy, but she's also nice to everyone. She's probably just being polite. Kushina's hand brushed through his hair, the warmth of her touch easing him out of his stupor. Well, what do you think of her, then? Naruto paused for a moment, searching for the right words. Well, she's super nice, the nicest person I know, even nicer than Iruka-sensei. And she's strong as shit. Language. Sorry, she totally held her own against Niji. There's no way I could have lasted even half as long. Heck, I think Sasuke would have gotten eaten alive if he'd been the one down there, instead. With a laugh, Kushina prodded her son's cheeks. Do you think she's pretty? Naruto blinked. Absolutely. But you don't need me to tell you that. Naruto gestured toward the still image before them of the pale-eyed girl. Then, he narrowed his eyes, glaring suspiciously at his mother. Why do you ask? He certainly thought it was worth pointing out with this Sakura girl. There was a sudden seriousness in his mother's tone that caught Naruto off guard. Why did you point it out for her, but not for Hinata? I guess I just felt that the other stuff was more important to mention with Hinata. Naruto frowned. Is that bad? I wasn't trying to be rude, you know. Kushina's lips brushed his cheek. I think it's sweet. You know what else? Feeling him nod beneath her chin, Kushina chuckled. It sounds to me like you both think very highly of one another, Zame. Maybe you should go have that ramen with her, after all. Well, I mean she was probably just being polite, is all. I wouldn't want to. People don't visit somebody every day in the hospital to be nice, son. Kushina interrupted. They also don't make it a point to tell somebody that they're special to them, if that isn't actually the case. Look, as a completely neutral observer with no skin in the game, Kushina amusedly ignored her son's incredulous glare. It sounds to me like you've got at least one friend out there that wants to see you recover. For all you know, you might have a couple more people in your corner if you just open your heart to them, a bit. The list isn't exactly long, you know. Naruto sulked at that. Still, Kushina could see the tiniest beginnings of a smile etching itself onto his lips. Well, I'm no mathematician, Zame, but if my calculations are correct, then even one is more than nothing. That's all I had when I started making progress with my resonance. So I've got Hinata, Konohamaru, and Iruka-sensei, then and the old man Hokage, maybe. Depends on if he's feeling charitable on any given day, I guess. With a chuckle, Kushina exclaimed, that sounds like a solid 3.5, to me. Well over triple what I had, and you're far more talented than my dumbass ever was. Language. Naruto's grin was all teeth. Oh hush, you. If you get to be crude, mannerless deviant of a boy, then it's only natural that your poor mother gets a break, from time to time. They shared a laugh, before Kushina grew serious, once more. Listen to me, my love. Emotions are the very source of a person's strength of spirit. Few clans embody this more than our own. Everything we do, all of the challenges we face, and the things that we create, are all inspired by what lies within our hearts. Rage, grief, determination, hell, even lust can all serve as sources for strength, if used wisely. However, there's one that stands above all else for us. When an Uzumaki is concerned, there is no source of strength stronger in this world than love. Kushina swaddled her son into a tight hug. Romantic, platonic, maternal love. All of it, the stronger we love, the greater the depths of our potential. Open your heart to those you love, and punish those who would try to take it from you. Naruto snorted, but she knew he was listening, intently. With extreme prejudice. All of the prejudice. We Uzumaki are at our strongest when fighting for something precious to us. When your heart is full of love, and that which is most precious to you is in your mind, you will be as powerful as you need to be. You sound just like someone I met a while back. Naruto's eyes grew distant. His name was Haku, and he was one of the strongest people I've ever met. Then you understand, perfectly. Kushina pointed across from them, to a patiently waiting Mito, who was fading into sight. I'm done with your hair. Break's over. Fill your thoughts with all of those amazing friends of yours, and go show Gran how strong you can get. Naruto hopped onto his feet, immediately. One of his eyes glowed a brilliant amethyst color. Yeah. I've still got a promise to keep for Hinata. Gripping his grand aunt's hand, he grinned. Let's finish that fight, Granny. This is it for episode 1, thanks for watching.